Well, hello there. I've got another ramble from not too long ago, here ready for your consumption today. I don't have much to say other than I've been busy as per usual, so I hope you enjoy the condensed curation of my mental mumblings. Enjoy. I wish there wasn't so much to complain about today. I know that's absolving me of all the blame of complaining, but it's like, if there was just less to complain about, you think I would do it so much? No. If the world just made life easier in general, or the universe or whatever. That's one thing I don't think I've ever brought up on stream before. I have a frustration simply with the phrase, the universe. Not the phrase itself, I mean, the phrase is fun. It's like, yeah, it's the universe. It's just descriptive of the physical space in which we reside. People are really silly with it. They say the word the universe like it's sentient. I make jokes about living in a simulation, but, oh, I'm stupid. I'm really stupid, buddy! It's annoying when people say the universe.
The universe has not been doing things good for me recently. The universe.
It's like you gotta relent so much about an inanimate object. It is not sentient. The universe is not sentient, and a lot of people speak in a way that they say the universe when really it's like they mean God, they mean some sort of a higher power that controls everything. They don't mean just like the actual like physical fabric of the place upon which we reside. You're trying to imply that thing is sentient, which it is not, and we verifiably know it's not. I mean, I suppose we don't verifiably know that it's not in the same sense that we don't verifiably know that God does not exist, but it's like you could just say God, but it's like taboo to say God now, because whenever you say God, some atheist ends up pissing their pants. Case in point, I was listening to one of Dr. Phil's old podcasts, because for the life of me, I can't just listen to the thousands of hours of podcasts I've already got backed up. Anyway, it was one of his earliest interviews, I believe the one with Charles Barkley. I can't be 100% sure because Phil doesn't manage his episodes and channels very well at all, which is obviously obnoxious, and I don't want to scrub through the entire episode again just to find a single clip. But Barkley was a sports analyst on TV, and for whatever reason during his career, he ended up talking about several tangential topics. He mentions getting political, talking about taxes, and he mentions some of his Christian beliefs on air. His higher-ups really didn't like it because atheists had a hissy fit that they didn't share their perspective, and they got butthurt when they saw other people disagree. Doesn't sound very rational to me. It solidifies my perspective that you can remove God, but you can't remove religion, and atheism is just as much of a dogmatic frenzy as any belief system, or at least it fuels my confirmation bias, to which I am susceptible, as we all are. Crying and writing a Reddit post about it, and it's like, I mean, if we weren't so sensitive about the fact that people believe God exists. I suppose if you genuinely believe the universe is sentient, like you believe in astrology or whatever, which planet is mucking you up mentally right now? Let's blame all of your problems and lack of self-awareness and accountability on inanimate objects millions of miles away. It's like, if you don't believe in God, and you're using the phrase the universe just to avoid saying God because either you don't believe in it or you see people. I feel like if you believe in God, then you would actually just say, oh yeah, God did not plan that for me today. God planned for me to what is God telling me when he's making these things happen, you know? But people just use it as a like ubiquitous replacement for, it's like the universe. The universe really didn't want me to X. The universe is trying to tell me Y, and it's like, you don't mean to imply that the universe is sentient unless you like literally believe in like astrology or something. So it's like they use it as sort of a shield, a replacement, because they're afraid just to say God for whatever reason, either because that doesn't line up with their personal beliefs or because they're afraid of some sort of anger that will be directed on them for saying the word God, because someone else can't get over the fact that there's freedom of religion and that exists. People actually believe different things.
You're trying to push your fantasy on me.
It's like, I don't think anybody really intends to be offensive when they speak about that type of a thing. It's just funny when it becomes such a point of contention that people have to freak out about it. Regardless, the point that I was really, if you don't believe in some sort of a supreme being, that's kind of funny to think about actually, because one of my old Mixer followers was named Supreme Being, suddenly came back to mind. I think I may have been thinking about Supreme because of the Mixer viewer. The RNG with some of these platforms, as well as the way that platform dropping actually works, just kind of makes this game extremely difficult. It's a bit of a learning curve. What was I saying, like, however long ago? I always get so sidetracked. I genuinely wonder if Adderall would help this out a little bit more. I feel like I may have some sort of psychological issue that I need to work out. I feel like I haven't explained as much as I should have on a topic when that's really just a perception. That's what I feel, but it's not actually true. It's like, yeah, no, you just ended up repeating yourself and being super long-winded for no reason. I feel like that only really applies like live. Like I'm really good at identifying that I haven't spoken enough on a topic. I require a sort of a scripted situation to actually be as cogent as possible on it. I wish I was better. I feel like mood can have a pretty big effect on it. I need to make sure that my brain is properly satisfied with having explained whatever the piss I was trying to explain. I think I was just trying to say, like, what is the final point? What is the final conclusion of the concept that I was attempting to communicate? If you don't believe in God, then it's like, yeah, whatever. Freedom of religion, freedom of the lack thereof. I'm just gonna get increasingly more frustrated the longer I can go on without being able to explain what I was trying to explain, because that's deeply unsatisfying to me whenever I can't, like, finish a stupid sentence or a thought or really anything. What is the conclusion? If you don't believe in some sort of a higher being, then you really ought to not imply that the universe is or has some sort of a higher being that controls and or even cares about the monotonous, mundane day-to-day life of some Starbucks drinking ratchet hoe somewhere. See, I don't know if I've ever really heard like more males or more females say, oh,
the universe, the universe.
I don't tend to see a lot of males who believe in astrology, but maybe that's just my personal experience. Maybe I have a bit of tunnel vision. I don't even think that's really the point here. And of course I have to consider that this stupid fan, that's actually the only thing keeping me alive at this point. Our state is having a real one, having a normal one right now. Actually, I don't even know how much of a normal one it is, because I swear our previous summers, our state was dealing with a lot of crap. Let's just pause and think about this thing so I can move on and stop bothering about it, because for some reason I could talk during Wall-E, but I can't talk during this. The overall point I'm making is that atheists don't subscribe to theistic thinking, but because atheism does not supply a reasonable explanation for what is perceived as supernatural elements occurring in people's lives, people who may think they are atheists themselves naturally gravitate towards theistic thinking in trying to supply explanations for things. If you don't believe in God, don't ascribe motivation to inanimate, unsentient objects, because what you're doing when you ascribe that motivation is you're actually arguing for there being a presence that sets those events in motion, which means you believe in a higher power. It's just evidentiary that people who don't believe in God can't back up their claims in a way that makes sense to people, so they revert to theistic thinking despite supposedly not believing in God. You could probably ask these types of people if they believe in God, and they'd object to that. But if you ask them if they believe that the universe is sentient, they'll revert to theistic beliefs. Who are you kidding? This is hilarious. Oh, and for some people who reject Judeo-Christian beliefs due to the unsavory flavor it leaves in their mouths, I have some well-intentioned recommendations. First, acknowledge the irrational forces behind your rejection and see fit that you seek only the truth, even when you may not like it. Second, there are many theistic, atheistic, pantheistic, existential belief systems that could answer a lot of the burning questions you've got about your existence, the meaning of life, and the functions of the universe. We must first accept that we can never truly know everything, then seek out as much information as we can. You haven't got to cling to your shallow understanding. This goes for people of all belief systems, both Christians and atheists. Read my scriptures, study the musings of biblical scholars, study the findings and debates of scientists, engage in respectful discussions about belief systems. There's a whole world of intellectual thought that, Christian or atheist, you may be shutting yourself out of. You don't have to expect to have your beliefs or principles changed, but you can adjust them according to as holistic a view as you can, given all the information that exists, regardless of how contested it is. We're not here to think the same, we're here to think. Respectfully, you have a brain, use it. You have ears, use them. You have eyes, a mouth, a nose, your entire body is capable of functioning in a vast amount of ways. If you don't want to feel insecure about your beliefs anymore, arm yourself with a well-informed worldview to defend it, not necessarily against anyone else, but against the doubts in your own mind. Cognitive dissonance is inherently stressful, and you'll have more peace of mind when you can fill your brain with more knowledge with which to make sense of the world. Or you'll just get constantly wired like me. I suppose it's not for everybody. Take it or leave it. I didn't want to like hop on stream and just be like, I'm pissed at everything. Like there's always a fair variety of not viewpoints, but attitudes expressed in my stream. So I actually wonder if I wake up tomorrow, because I don't think I've ever streamed like on Adderall before, and obviously I'm not gonna like just pop another one right now. I don't mean to be like too out there or not depressing or like whatever the word is, but like sometimes it's just like overwhelming feeling of, man, I just want to like disappear forever, leave everything behind. Perhaps that's not like all too unreasonable. I'm certain lots of people feel that way due to a lot of different reasons, but I feel like I just haven't been very cogent at all this entire stream, and there could be a lot of reasons for that, but I'm rusty. In many ways, I do believe that I am rusty, so obviously that could be a big contributing factor to this. Don't have to beat myself up about the way that I feel, if the way that I feel is entirely due to circumstances within my control. Be nice if they were in my control, that's for certain.
No one ever said it would be easy.
There's something unresolved, like I can feel, it's like there's something that I feel like I haven't properly satisfied myself in an explanation, and I'm wondering if that's because I perceive like something, if I'm busy in my brain, you know, like if my brain is preoccupied in some sort of a way. It's like I'm trying to focus on the game, but then if I'm speaking at the same time, then my brain isn't able to properly process and actually check off, like my brain will have like a little subconscious list or something of what I'm trying to talk about. I've got this stream of consciousness that I need to actually like give. Like my brain isn't allowed to check off those things, so I feel like I haven't talked about all that I need to talk about, even though I have, maybe. Or maybe I'm gaslighting myself right now. We love gaslighting. I've no clue. My brain just wants to continually think, like, what was I thinking about? Like, what is the conclusion? What is the big, massive takeaway? And it's like, I don't know, what is the takeaway other than what I've already spoken about? Is there some sort of a big, like...
The big conclusion is...
It's like, yeah, come to Raincloud the Dragon, twitch.tv/even, for all of your big takes, because I'm one of many people on the internet who can tell you exactly how to think and feel about everything.
I just tell you how it is.
Yeah, I don't think that's true at all. What am I even saying? I feel like the speaking just comes out of a fear of having to face this dragon right now. Piss. It's fine. It's fine. Do I profess to know anything? Maybe one or two things. Ask me about Adobe and you'll see I know a thing or two about that. See, now that I've kind of considered that, like, there may be factors within my brain, the fact that I'm focusing on something else, that being the game, it takes away enough of my focus. I can't feel like I've finished talking about something. It's like, like I feel like I've actually processed a pretty decent amount about that. Like maybe I should just like cut my losses and understand that when I'm feeling that way, that there's no real reason that I'm feeling, unless that I can immediately put my finger on. Well, I think I have an innate sense of when I'm not being as cogent as possible, so my brain identifies it and tries to weed it out because I have emotional investment in correctness for whatever reason. Clearly, I didn't reach a satisfying conclusion to the end of the stream because I felt the need to expound upon it nearly a year later, but it's wise to acknowledge that the book is never going to be closed on these deep topics that I always find myself inevitably swamped in. In order to try to close the book, you have to make a case for or against something, which takes time and effort to do. I just wish I could do that in the background without getting frustrated with myself that I wasn't on task. But the book will never be closed because we love to dust them off, crack them open, and spit upon the cases people made throughout history. By that perspective, making the case for anything is a fool's errand. But we make the best determination we can based on the evidence we've got. Intellectual pursuits for discerning higher truth will always help to assist our eternal progress, but it would serve me well to chill out a little more often. Some sort of another topic to actually jump on. Why even bother? No topics. There are no topics. There's nothing to address, and there never will be. Ever. Yeah. Anyway, forget there's a bit of a cooldown, and if you just continually buffer the smoke dash small plane, then it actually is not a good idea at all. At all. Not a good idea at all, Batman. Is there even anyone who speaks with a British accent, and like a Batman villain specifically? I suppose that's one thing that the stream would be unaware of. I'm not even certain where it first came from, rather. Probably a good while ago. I think it came from like some stupid meme where someone was doing like a Joker impression and he was like, society calls me gay or whatever. I think it may have came from that. I was doing a Joker impression, and for some reason that just began this come on! But again, I'm not even certain where it came from exactly, but it's like, for some reason, I just started saying Batman to, like, everything at some point, like, last year. Like, I think it's like I somehow associated it in my brain that anytime I was making some sort of a voice, I wanted to say, like, Batman at the end of it. It's like a Batman villain talking to Batman or something. It doesn't really make much sense. I'm not certain why that happened, but it is pretty funny. I'm actually kind of trying to identify now where exactly, like, I know it came from Joker. There's probably some Joker line from the Dark Knight trilogy. It's not always about the money, Batman. It could have been the Joker Lopunny. I got a Lopunny. He pronounces it weird. I don't know about what, like, the actual pronunciation is supposed to be, but I always remember calling it Lopunny. Lopunny. Zoinks! Speaking of Zoinks, I saw the Scoob movie finally. There was a certain point in time where I wanted to see some movies, but I didn't end up seeing them. When I had seen the trailers for Scoob, I wasn't enthusiastic because I really hated a lot of the voice actors. They just really didn't do a good job. They didn't capture the essence of the characters. Now after watching it, I think it's actually more of an issue with animation than the actors most of the time. Well, first of all, the child actor for Shaggy was just plain old bad. Actually, all of the child actors were very poor.
Like, slow down, dude.
This stuff will rot your teeth. Let me give you a hand.
Ghost or no ghost? It's Halloween. No one should go home without their candy.
Guys, there's no such thing as ghosts.
Daphne!
Maybe we should do this again.
I realize now that the cause of the uncanniness they're suffering from is that the animators are doing all the acting for the voice actors. This isn't because the voice actors didn't try their best, it's because the director seems to have not been giving them much to go off of. Frank Welker will always do fantastically as Scooby. He's a talented voice actor. But the rest of these people weren't in character, they just spoke lines. The delivery has no acting behind it because the director didn't guide the actors to being in character, thus the delivery wasn't on point. You can tell this is the case because every well-acted character, Scoob for example, is from someone who has much experience, while everybody else delivers lines poorly. If it was a bad voice actor, you would only see one character whose lines are out of place. And even then, good directors can get good deliveries out of less talented actors. If everybody on the project is talented, the project is destined to be strong. If only the leaders are talented, there still may be much hope for the project to go well, and the less experienced become more experienced in the process, which is great. If everybody except the director is talented, you may end up with a fumbled story. If every leader is untalented, your story is destined to fail to live up to standard. With this flick, you can tell everyone involved with the visuals are talented, but when you see, for example, that Simon Cowell, a professional, sounds bland and flat, you can tell the director wasn't squeezing him enough for the proper delivery.
Oh, whoopee, a diner. I'll have a napkin and some hand sanitizer. Congratulations, gentlemen. But you two aren't even listening. You're eating a clownishly oversized sandwich. Thank you. I also played Rum Tum Tugger in my secondary school's production of Cats.
But I'm sure the director learned a lot from this, and that deadlines and pushing from production meant that he just had to take some L's in the recording booth and continue on. This is not a definitive case by any means, but I found it interesting to explore. Like, it's kind of confusing. A lot of the deliveries from the child actors were bad in the sense that it's like, you are not in character at all because you don't know what it is to be in character. It shows, it's like very painfully obvious that you're not well trained or you haven't been directed well. Directors have a lot of power over that, you know, so your voice director's gotta put in their 2 cents and constantly be talking with and have a good relationship with the voice actors to make sure that they're doing a good job. There were many lines that were delivered by those child actors that was like, you do not sound like a character. Like being scared of a certain situation or making a statement is like, you don't sound like a character, you sound like an actor reading lines, and it's very painfully obvious. There are lots of points in that we have the golden standard, at least for voice acting. There were loads of people who really didn't like A Pup Named Scooby-Doo, but when it comes to making those actors sound like children, they had the original, the Shaggy voice actor, Casey Kasem, put on a softer, higher pitched, younger voice, and he did a fantastic job at it. Matthew Lillard, when he first starred in the James Gunn Scooby-Doo, did so well, and then later on he reevaluated his ability to do the voice for actual voice work rather than live action work as well. My Dreamcast, they still couldn't get anybody better or more noteworthy or make more money or whatever whatever. I actually don't know what the motivation was. I would assume it was just to be able to sell. You have to have a well-known cast. And like, I'm not even entirely opposed to stupid High School Musical kid for Fred, because I mean they really played up the himbo Fred in this version, which I mean I wasn't even frustrated with it, or like I didn't really have any problem with Fred character-wise. And I mean, character-wise, I don't think I had really any problems. It was mostly voice. Some of the jokes I wasn't totally on board for. There were definitely some lines that was like, why did you even put that there? There's a point where the characters start fighting.
One that started it. Toxic masculinity.
But I don't even know who said it, said toxic masculinity, and it's like, even if you agreed in the idea of toxic masculinity existing, why does that line have to exist in that pervasive sense in a kid's movie such as this? You know, I'm not opposed to High School Musical himbo Fred, that's fine. Frank Welker is literally acting in this movie, so it's weird to replace Frank Welker in that sense. Fine, whatever. If you have Frank Welker, it's kind of weird to have him on as Scooby but not have him on as Fred, and he's been Fred since the very beginning, and he's extremely old, so it's like, he's an impressive voice actor, and he goes ham. He's amazing. It's definitely interesting to consider that he wasn't the original Scooby, but he was the original Fred, and then eventually he just decided to pick up Scooby as well and did a fantastic job at it. For at least the original voice cast, I would have expected them, like adult Shaggy I wasn't frustrated with. I think he did perfectly fine, at least for someone who didn't have any Shaggy experience. As Shaggy voice actors go, he's really not good. It's not like offensive, it's not really to the degree where it's like, why are you even here? You didn't even try kind of deal. It's like you have a character with a certain voice type that has been cast for a long time, and you didn't even really try to sound like the character, you just voice acted as yourself. That was impossible. That's kind of how I felt about Daphne and Velma. That was one interesting thing, is that I felt as though I'd missed out. I could have sworn there were jokes that were in one or more of the trailers that didn't actually make it into the final cut of the movie, that at least the one that we watched. So I found that to be a bit strange, because I remember thinking that some of the humor was actually pretty good, but it kind of rang a bit hollow for me. I was chill with, see, because originally, like, it doesn't look believable. The characters and their voice actors don't seem to be... Oh crap, gotta take some pills. Pills here. Let's talk about the child ones. I'm trying to remember what the voice cast was for the rest of them. I don't think Frank Welker did Fred as a kid in A Pup Named Scooby-Doo. I also kind of dislike the origin story aspect of it. And I get that it's not entirely in continuity, and I mean, hardly any of them are, but it's just a little frustrating. Like, Shaggy and the gang were funny little group of kids in the 60s. Shaggy was a hippie. Technically, the van was Shaggy's, and the reason why the van has its like hippie style is because it's Shaggy's, but it's really Fred who took care of it and drove it all the time. And that's not something that was explicit in the originals, to certain. I think a lot of people, out of nostalgia, project certain ideas onto the original show that just aren't accurate to what it literally was. People just have certain ideas about it, you know. I would like to see in future iterations for it to just be internally consistent. Wow, that was scary. Obviously, a lot of other Scooby fans probably won't agree, but objectively speaking, the gold standard for Scoob content when it comes to internal consistency is Mystery Incorporated. It switched up things, wasn't true to the original standard. Lots of fans didn't like it because it included drama, romance, and oh no, teenagers would never involve themselves in romance and drama. That would never happen. So I find it realistic in that sense. It's like, but it's also interesting to actually have drama and character arcs and character development. I would much rather have it there than to not. People, because they grew up with the original, being like, oh no, that my original didn't have that. It's like, okay, but was the original good? The world isn't like real. The world building in the original is probably its weakest aspect, as well as the characters aren't. Piss off! It's like the characters aren't real people, and these unreal people are in a place where, and a lot of this is because of the lack of budget. It's just they just so happen to stumble upon a formula like resonated with people. Big flaw of the world building of the originals is due to the budget and due to sort of the tone that they were trying to portray. The environments that they're in, the painted backgrounds and everything. The backgrounds are these very bizarre, dark worlds, and there's no people there. They don't have any crowds. There's never any sort of like hustle and bustle. It's like they sort of exist in these eerie, like ghostly worlds, and it's very strange. But because it's what they grew up with as a timeless classic, people kind of give it a pass. I'd say it's worse than that. People treat the things they loved as kids with kid gloves and assume it to be better than it truly was. Children will watch anything. I'm not going to pretend in 20 years that Cocomelon is better than literally anything else just because the iPad generation is growing up on it now. And hey, I grew up on the original Scoob too, but in a storytelling sense, it's not good. At the same time, it's certainly better than many of its sequels because Hanna-Barbera can't have nice things. People give it a pass because they grew up with it as a child and it's a timeless classic and whatnot, but the reasons it's a timeless classic is less because of what it is and more because of what you remember it being, which is not the same. And it's like, granted, like, I love it. They're very entertaining and endearing. If they weren't, then it wouldn't have been as popular. We wouldn't have the franchise that we have today, but it doesn't really make sense. Regardless, I don't remember the entire cast of A Pup Named Scooby-Doo Incarnation versus the overall original cast, but I do know that it was one of Casey Kasem's final projects as Shaggy. I know that much. I obviously think Casey Kasem did an irreplaceable job. I mean, both as the original Shaggy and as a young Shaggy. Why? Stupid cat. I'm gonna send you to the pound. The game should allow me to just start at go. Like, that'd be kind of nice. No, wasn't Casey Kasem in What's New Scooby-Doo? But it's strange because What's New Scooby-Doo started in like 06 or something. The ones that were around the Return of the Century, the classic, like, did they make 3 or 4 of those direct-to-DVD, direct-to-video? Scooby-Doo and the Witch's Ghost, Zombie Island, Cyber Chase. Not in that order. I believe Zombie Island was the first one, then it was Witch's Ghost. I was correct on this order, but I left out Alien Invaders for whatever reason. So it's 1998 Zombie Island, which strangely enough has Scooby as Scott Innes, but not Shaggy, unlike the rest of them where he voices both. Then it's 1999 Witch's Ghost, 2000 Alien Invaders, and 2001 Cyber Chase. I love these, and I think it's a shame they were direct-to-video given the production quality and cast. Tim Curry, Tara Strong, Mark Hamill, these probably would have done well in theaters, albeit perhaps there could have been more burnout, more marketing budget, and thus we wouldn't have gotten as many. Who knows? And I believe that was Scott Innes that did those. A lot of the time when people are trying to make a Shaggy voice, that's the impression that they land on, is the Scott Innes. And he's good. It's like a very exaggerated Shaggy.
Gameric design. I bet it's way cooler than this one.
And I think Lillard kind of built on that. Like, part of why Lillard is the best of all of the Shaggys, he took the voice work of Kasem, he took the voice work of his other peers, and he considered all of them as one, synthesized them all into one voice. What I would have done from the very beginning, Casey Kasem in A Pup Named Scooby-Doo did a very good job at raising his voice and being able to sound like a sort of child version of Shaggy. And I'm not sure if they ever used any sort of like vocal effects or if it was all entirely just talent. I mean, that was a 90s show, so I'm not sure how they assisted in making the voice work the way that they wanted it to. But he did a very good job. And I think that ought to be considered. It's like, if Matthew Lillard right now is the best we've got, then it's like slide him over, have him take a look at a pup named Scooby-Doo, be like, this is the kind of portrayal that we want for a kid Shaggy. This is the golden standard that we have. Can you do it? Just give it a go. Then it's like, or put his own spin on it. He's a talented voice actor. He's very good at acting as Shaggy. Give it to him. He's just good. I'm not sure what the hang-up was with specifically being like, let's get an actual child actor to act as all of these characters, as well as to stage it in like present day-ish. It's got a Shaggy who's like on his phone, listening to music alone, not having friends. 3 other like random kids just show up. Like, I don't know, it just didn't really strike me as a great way to do an origin story. Wasn't there like, maybe it was like a third party, but I swear there was like supposed to be some sort of an R-rated like Daphne and Velma solo story that was like a teenage sort of like off the cuff of a James Gunn, though I don't think they were both gonna be lesbian in that. That might have been like a fan one. I swear I saw like a trailer and I was like, wow, this actually looks really interesting. Regardless, I think all of their sort of child ideas were weird. Having Velma go as Ruth Bader Ginsburg, is that actually like right before she died or right after she died? I'm trying to remember like when they would have done that. I mean, it was very clear that the actors didn't really care about Scooby. It's like they just wanted to use, not the actors, sorry, the writers. It's like, this is just another IP that we can scoop up. And it's not like they like filled it absolutely to the brim with socially or politically charged things. There were definitely some strange motivations. What am I supposed to do? It was an interesting choice to put RBG, to have any sort of thing to do with her in the movie. I'm trying to remember when it was people found out she was dying and whatnot, because I know that came out in late 2020 or mid 2020 or something, and then she was passing in late 2020. Regardless, it's a weird thing to hear a child actor acting as a child character in a kid's show talk about Ruth Bader Ginsburg of all people. It's just strange. I would probably have been just as weirded out if she had venerated Judge Scalia or Clarence Thomas or someone else. It just seemed like a strange thing for a child character to say. It kind of makes me think that this iteration of her character is brainwashed. Like, if you hear a 6-year-old praising a Supreme Court justice, she's like 6. You really think she thinks that on her own? Or do you think she's getting kind of spoon-fed a little bit, regardless of which side of the political aisle the bias comes from? Look at other versions of Child Velma and tell me that's in character. Though I think an interpretation of a politically minded Velma could work well in a more adult version of Scoob, where we can actually have shaggy hippie weed jokes. Actually, you could make a 4 quadrants version of Scoob, and that could be hilarious. And I would absolutely love to write that. Warner Brothers, hit me up. I'll do voice acting for it as well. But it's not going to work in that it'll be jarring and odd if it's supposed to be a kid's film. Like, that was actually the most optimal damage I think it has ever been done. Nobody's ever done damage as good as I did right there. I think the one main point, it's like, besides the child actors being not talented, or them being poorly directed, almost always a problem on a set with, if you see poor child actors that are not acting well, it's almost always the director's fault. I reckon they could have done a lot. I think the final point that I wanted to identify before talking about like the other Hanna-Barbera characters that they used was, the first time I'd seen it, I was like, this child actor's not delivering good lines. He doesn't sound like the character that he's trying to portray. But then later on I realized it's like there are loads of these characters that just don't even seem right at all. And I think part of that is because, so for instance, not even Simon Cowell in all of his scenes really seems like his voice is coming from his portrayal in the animated character. It's like there's something wrong with the actual like animation direction that has made it very strange to watch those characters on screen because their voices just don't sound natural. If Simon Cowell, it doesn't seem like Simon Cowell's voice is coming out of Simon Cowell, there's something wrong in the actual animation itself that's making that happen. It might not be a sync issue, it might not be like, I think it might just be that they animated the characters before they had the voice actors. I don't know, just in case they couldn't get the voice actors or something. Like, like, I actually don't know why. That's how some animations have gone. And actually, I swear it was in like some sort of a behind the scenes or something, Disney animated movie. It's something that I was looking at, is that they would animate the characters before they even got the voices. That's a surefire way to make it look very uncanny. It's just not going to work when you do it that way. And I swear that that had something to do with why it was so strange in this production in particular. It's like that there's just something off about a lot of the animation. The Dick Dastardly, character-wise and voice actor-wise, is one of the best parts of the movie. Him and his sidekick, the relationship and the way that they actually portray everything and have the exposition in the movie, and it's all really pretty well done. It's pretty faithful to his original character as well, and it's pretty decent. Captain Caveman is one that I was not really sold on for a number of reasons. Probably chief among them being the voice was just not Captain Caveman, but he wasn't the same character in like the same sort of situation as he was in the original. It's just a very strange way that they put him in. He didn't sound like him. He didn't really act like him. When it comes to being faithful, that one was pretty bad. As well as I don't think he was entirely, there wasn't really much of a point to him being there in the first place. I did like they had a couple of other Hanna-Barbera characters show up in the credits animation thing, so I thought that was cool. So I was cool with a lot of that. A lot of the overall execution was done very poorly, and that's really why I couldn't get on like the hype train for it. There was a lot of points in the movie where I was just being like, no, like I was just kind of cringing as a Scooby fan. But I consider myself a Scooby fan. I don't know. It's a definite fixation of mine. Fan is an interesting word in this context. Yeah, I think it had a lot of potential, and there were a fair amount of jokes that were pretty decent, but I overall really was not in love with it. Not at all. So I definitely want, like, especially if it's something that's as high budget as that project was, you would want something to be far more faithful. And it's like, at least you can recognize like the roots and whatnot and utilize some of those very underutilized characters. Like after a certain point in Hanna-Barbera's history, they just gave up on everything else and they just excluded themselves to a single IP, that of Scooby. You know, they could have done a lot more with a lot of those other characters. I'd be good with them expanding more on, you know, taking those older characters and making them, because it's like, you know, if people didn't think that they were good, or, you know, they were unsuccessful for whatever reason, it's like, give us a reboot of those now that you have the budget to at least like bring those characters up. And, you know, Dick Dastardly was never a popular character, and now it's like he's kind of on the map because of his role in that film. Pretty great amount of meme potential. I see it as a wasted potential, and I think I would be angrier at it if I gave it more thought. It needs to be addressed how often it happens, and whether or not are we seeing things that aren't there and making issues out of things that aren't problems when we see certain things in media when it comes from like a studio direction perspective. It's like it's good to be aware of that, because the amount of times the studio, multiple studios, whoever owns the rights to whatever IPs, have taken something and intentionally filled it with crap for some agenda. Like, we got to stay aware of one of those concerns legitimate and one of those just really not a concern at all. Let's swap chairs again, because I was on my default chair this time around. Evidently I need to just abandon these chairs altogether, because I basically took another chair, assuming that between my current one and this other one, that I could get a single one that has all of the features that I want it to. Evidently that was not the case, because what ended up happening is, rather than getting like one chair with, you know, good arms and like good everything, so I wanted to get one chair. I took apart the one that I'd picked up thrifting and attempted to fix it. I couldn't do so. I legitimately didn't. Yeah, it was a mess. Like, just imagine like sweating and strangling this stupid thing for ages and ages. Like, it was painful. Such a struggle. I think some of my most frustrating efforts tinkering with things has been when I know how something's supposed to work exactly, but I don't have the ability to actually, it's been like the exact same manufacturing technique in two different things that caused this issue for me. One of them was in my scooter and the other was in this chair that I'd taken apart. It's like you have to put in this counter tension is something, and it's just impossible to do, like, without a tool or without a third hand. And it's like, if I just had a third hand that could put enough pressure in this direction for me, then I'd be doing absolutely fine, but I obviously don't have 3 hands, so it's just impossible to do anything about it. But yeah, my scooter was also another story, because it was one of those electric scooters that it had decided something within it broke, and it was like, I'm just gonna not function as intended anymore. Charlie Foxtrot, it was the exact same deal where it's like, I need a third hand. At least now I know to like look out for it, and it's like, I'm not even going to attempt to do anything with this until I can have another person in here to help me with this. But it's like, it's one of those things where it's so tantalizingly close, where it's like, I swear if I just put enough pressure or whatever, then it'll just give way and allow me to reassemble it. It's just, it's stupid when you know that the manufacturers could have just made it easier by not being so stupid in that way. It's like they could have just given you a little more space so that you could insert this stupid... It's just part of the reason why it's like, I'm not an engineer. I'm not one of those guys who goes in and is super happy with getting all greasy and crap. And it's also frustrating knowing that with both of these items, funnily enough, I tried to take them apart. I tried to do what I could do. I was like, you know, I can fix this. Why worry about getting a replacement or dealing with it otherwise if I can just fix it myself? Handyman, save me that cost. But with both of these, I was unable to fix it, caused me a lot of stress, and then it was like, I give up, I'm not even trying. Especially considering it's like, I took apart the scooter to replace a certain component, something to do with the battery, like basically the thing that allows the battery to actually discharge to the rest of the system was busted, presumably. It's like, I bought a replacement part on Amazon, installed the stupid thing, and it still didn't work. The only way that I could get the thing to work is like banging it against the floor or something. And it's like, how does any of this work? What would have been really cool is if I could have like just grabbed the battery and used that for my own purposes, because it's this big long battery. I may have looked it up at one point. It's probably got quite the milliamp hours on it. I suppose I could go check whenever, but I really just want to get rid of this dumb thing because it's useless to me. Completely worthless, seeing as it doesn't do its job anymore. And it was sad because it was really cool to have. Dumb scooter could travel it up to, how quick was it? It was 15 miles an hour or something, and 25 kilometers an hour, something like that. Whatever the conversion on that is. It was nice to have. It was a great tool, and I'd only just figured out how to get it to fold back together. If I could take it into a shop, if there was some piss off, I think there's probably something like that in like New York or something. You can just go take it into a shop and be like, hey, yeah, can I just get this repaired? Like, I would have done something like that. I don't think there's anything that was like worthwhile in my area for that. Fine, we'll try to sell it for a discount, whatever. It was pretty silly. So that's actually just sitting out there because I would love to have it up and running again, but I couldn't figure out how to fix the stupid thing, so at a certain point you have to cut your losses with how much time you're spending trying to get the dumb thing to work and just give up, get rid of it. Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. There was a certain point where when I was trying to get it repaired where there was someone who was like, yeah, you can like charge it in this way if you like you have to like trick the battery or something, and it was extremely sus. It was like, you just need like a zip tie and expose the metal ends and then like shove it into this side so that it actually... Long story short, I attempted to do what he was doing and it ended up just like frying and it was like sparking all over the place, and I was like, this is literally dangerous. Why did you make me do this? Why would you tell anyone to do something like this? That was the point. I tried to do that like twice and I'm like, yeah, I'm not doing this. This was like the final shot in the dark here. It did nothing but potentially hurt me. It didn't actually hurt me, but it could have. Good riddance. I miss that scooter though. It was so convenient. Though I probably should have been wearing a helmet on it. I mean, I should be wearing a helmet with my bike as well. It's cool to get exercise and everything, but like, man, the amount of time that it ends up taking up. I don't think I ever named that scooter. I like naming my things. It's just fun. I would have named it something D&D related because it had D&D stickers on it from the previous owner, but it wasn't working anyway, so I hope that one guy gets good parts off it and whatnot. Maybe I'll just devote a little more time into trying to repair it, especially now that I have my room all renovated. Well, renovated? I don't know if that's entirely the word that I was looking for. Funny that it's been over a year since I moved my desk in and all that. Lots of things have changed since then. I enjoy looking back and putting these little videos together. Anyhow, I'll be live on Twitch again, eventually. Hopefully with some much needed quality of life upgrades and a little more content behind the scenes. And God willing, a better job. Thanks for tuning in.
Where are you? We got some work to do now. Scooby-Dooby-Doo, where are you? We need some help from you now. I see you, pretending you got a sliver. But you're not fooling me, 'cause I can see the way you shake.